I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my. They are dying to make a deal. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir.
I think Trump is killing it. His outcomes already have been fantastic. He's all about outcomes. How he gets there really doesn't matter.
He is a panicant, as he used the term. And I think he blinked when he realized, oh my God, we could be facing a serious structural crisis that could escalate all over the world. Trust is an inherent piece of trade, and he has blown that up. There is no art of the deal here. It's total chaos.
This is the classic Trump style. He does something provocative and the world freaks out. The corporate media in America freaks out. The Democrats freak out. And then a few days later, the outcome is exactly what we all wanted. He's willing to work through the dips in popularity and the polling because he knows what's good in the long run.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable.
More importantly, it's just reality. If we're going to continue to defend the West with a, almost $1 trillion military budget, it should be alarming to our friends in the West that we are now paying more for debt service than we are for defense and security. And that's really worrisome. So it's just reality. We had to fix that.
What he was hoping to do with this war on trade, as we call it, rather than a trade war, he was trying to bring yields down. And what we saw, at least yesterday, is that bond yields had gone up, which meant that refinancing America's ginormous debt pile got much more expensive and very, very dangerous.
The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
All you have to do is look at the immediate gains made yesterday when he paused those tariffs, how the stock market shot up massively. And that's one of 10 in the past just 100 years where it shot up in such a great way. The other 9 reasons as to why the stock market shot up is immediate panic after the great financial crash of 2008, Black Monday, and also the Great Depression in the US, right? So essentially, what we could see is that stock markets are really, really scared at the moment, and they continue to be.
Look, the market volatility has, an effect on consumer confidence, on spending. So I don't think that was something that he wanted. Surely we expected volatility, but maybe not to that degree. I've said this a few times in the media that 10% of Americans, including me, own 88% of the equities. And the other 40% of Americans, top 40%, own the remaining 12%. So it really is affecting really only significantly the 10% of equity owners. And those of us who own, stocks, bonds, and property do really well with Democrat administrations. There was massive asset inflation during the Obama years. And so the rich people got richer. The top 10% and the so-called 1% got richer, and wages for working people were anemic. They were basically flat for 8 years. They went up 8% in Trump's 4 years. And then in Biden administration, wages went down 3%. This is really for the benefit of the people who don't own financial assets. And that's kind of a real reset in the Republican Party.
I cannot say anything to them because it's just completely mad sticking with people like this. It's just completely baffling that they're essentially just rolling on vibes. And you can see he's done this a few times. It's kind of an up and down. So they go, yes, after the deal, he's paused the tariffs and people are queuing up. And then, whenever he puts tariffs back on, he says, oh, yes, this will bring back jobs. Either way, either you get the real benefits of tariffs, air quotes on that one. There are no benefits to tariffs, really. What a great thing he's done for America. And then as soon as he pauses it, those benefits somehow go away. But he's now a mastermind because he's after the deal of the situation. It's schizophrenic. It's ludicrous. It doesn't make any rational sense. So I don't know what to say to his supporters apart from just step back from the partisanship. Look at what is happening to your stock market and your bond yields. It's really, really, really bad.
I think he had to maybe take the win to a certain degree, and it was a win. You have 75 countries that have reached out to the White House willing to negotiate, many of whom are suggesting zero interest rates, including the EU. And that's exactly the outcome that we wanted. Nobody really wants to get into a tariff war.
So this approach has backfired in a massive way. And the main reason for that isn't just because, he will claim, oh, all these countries are queuing up to do trade deals with us, et cetera, et cetera. Well, actually, it's in their own interest to do so. If any blockades, to trade happen, they're going to try and find a solution, right? Tariffs are a way of forcing their hand. So that's what he's going to say. Here's the issue, though. The trust that has been eroded and destroyed over this is going to be so severe.
Is there pain in the market? At some point, you're unwilling to tolerate this idea of a Trump put. Is there a threshold?
I think your question is so stupid.
And I hear all this whining on the left that, oh, it's inflationary and it's going to hurt the working class the most. Completely not true for two reasons. One is there's no data to suggest that tariffs are inflationary. The data that I've been reading from MIT is that 40% are borne by the producer that's exporting goods or importing into the US. 40% is borne by the readjustment in the currency, and then only 20% is passed through to the consumer. So it's a fraction of the tariff amount. So when you hear these people on the left say, oh, a 10% tariff and my $100,000 car is going to cost $110,000. It's just not true, right? That does not get passed through directly. The other point is, if tariffs are so inflationary, why does Germany and Japan and India and China have tariffs? I don't see an inflationary crisis in any of those countries. In fact, China is facing a deflationary crisis, if anything. They cannot keep prices up.
Coming on to China, of course, they now have a 125% tariff, which is crazy, because what will happen now is that there are going to be manufacturers in the US who rely on imported commodities, that some of which you can't really produce at scale in the US. Take aluminium, for example, or even some types of steel. Those businesses in the US who have done nothing wrong are going to be hit with ginormous cost increases. We are going to see bankruptcies. It is terrible.
The fact is that you don't have free trade. We think of it as free trade, but you right now don't have free trade. And I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. This is a great country.
He's good at it, right? He knows how to get to the outcomes that he wants, that are best for the American people, and frankly, better for the world. This dependency on cheap labor from China was a big mistake. And when we brought China into the WTO 25 years ago, we thought foolishly, as it turns out, but we all expected, as they grew and they became more capitalist, that they would also become more democratic and maybe, move away from, authoritarianism and communism in general. And they haven't. They've gotten worse. And so after 25 years of having, IP stolen from Western companies and having, industries gutted by cheap labor, I think it's time to do something that's unorthodox and provocative. And that's what it took. And that's the nature of President Trump. He's seen these problems. He's been talking about unfair trade since the 80s.